Yeah, it's Matt. Wanted to talk about finding a trading mentor and avoiding the fake gurus or the furus as they're commonly referred to out there on the Twitter sphere and all that YouTube and all that horse shit. But um, anyway, and mentor being kind of loose here, not necessarily like a one-on-one mentorship like we would probably normally think of a mentor. But anyway, let's get into it. I can get my fucking thing to work. There we go. Why get a mentor? Because trading is hard. It's really hard. And in hard things, difficult things, it's good to have someone who has more experience than you and help learn from their experience and help them guide you. Um, there's a ton of information out there about this stuff, about trading, books, websites, YouTube. I mean, it's all out there. Um, Look, it's the great thing about the internet, right? Is that information is free and you can learn almost everything, but also misinformation is free, and so that kind of makes it a double-edged sword, right? It's a bit of a mixed blessing there. There's just a lot of traps and pitfalls that you might fall into if you go try to do the thing on your own, right? So a mentor can help cut through that shit and say, "Hey, look, I've read all this, I've watched all these videos, I've read all these stupid things. This is the stuff that actually matters. Focus your time here. Read these three books 5 times each rather than going and reading these other 15 books that are a complete waste of your time and will probably steer you in the wrong direction." That's the worst part is that, something that's not good but is benign will at the very least be a waste of your time while you're consuming the information. But if it leads you down the wrong path and you spend time and effort and money in this game, uh, going down that incorrect path, man, that's hard to come back from sometimes, right? You blow up a couple accounts because you believed in a trading system that was never going to work, or at least not the way you were implementing it because of the book you read or you know the furu that you followed. So you can also, obviously, from a mentor, you can also learn strategy or strategies that might work, and market awareness, risk management, self management. You can insert your masturbation joke there, but self management being like, okay, how do you manage your emotions when shit gets a little hairy during, before, during, and after a trade, which it's likely to do at some point. How do you manage yourself and stick to a system if you've got a system? So, and then obviously support, where you're going to make mistakes and have a shitty day or have a shitty week or a shitty month. I mean, trading drawdowns are a real thing, right? It's not always easy to surf those times alone. So having somebody who's gone through that stuff and hopefully knows how to coach someone through that, that can be helpful. And that's actually a really quick. Let's take a detour for a second and talk about, like, coaching in itself is a separate entity. I'm actually a coach in a different arena for, like, my day job. That's what I do. I coach people on stuff, and that's a skill set all on its own. So, like, even if you're a really good trader, if you've been doing it for 20 or 30 years, that doesn't mean you're good at coaching a new trader, um, because that's a whole set of different skills and yeah, just skills and techniques, right? Is just because you're good at something doesn't mean you can teach it, doesn't mean you can coach it either. Obviously, teaching is part of coaching to some degree, but coaching is more than just teaching, right? It's about understanding the person and how to get them to a certain place and how to support them. So, not every good trader is going to be good at that. So, first, I guess you'd want to consider what kind of a mentor do you think is right for you? Would a one-on-one relationship be best for you? Because those guys are out there, they'll do it. You're going to pay more for it, right? Like, because you're taking up someone's time, but they're literally going to sit with you, however they do it, right? For a few days, where it's a one-on-one intensive, you're like literally sitting next to them, watching their screen, and they're teaching you what to do. I had a buddy years ago that did that, uh, and then there's groups out there, there's chat rooms, right? And they each have their pros and cons. And price points and all that stuff. So one thing to consider with a chat room is, how well structured is the room? What is it actually like? Is it a place where it's like, okay, here's the main guy who's a really good trader and they talk a lot and they're the one communicating the most and answering questions? Or is it just a free for all where, yeah, you're getting that exposure to a really good trader, but you're also having to cutting through all of the bullshit of every noob who's asking dumb questions and every guy who thinks they're a veteran trader that's just saying stupid shit that doesn't need to be shared, right? That's those rooms are hellish. Um, so think about what services should be provided, and some of this is your preference, but there's it. We touched on some of this already. There's education, there's coaching, strategies with back test data and historical trade data. That I think is the most important. If it was me, education and coaching is good, but I feel like I can learn stuff on my own, and I can, as far as the coaching goes, like this is just my personal experience, probably because I am a coach in other ways. Like I can coach myself pretty well. I have pretty good ability to like kind of sit next to myself and be like, "Oh, you're being a giant douche right now. Maybe you should use this technique." Um, so the strategies though with back tested data, which back testing isn't it's not perfection, right? It doesn't mean that the system's always going to work because you're looking back through history. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen again the same way tomorrow or next month or over the next 3 years, right? There's always a challenge with back testing. There's better ways and worse ways to do it, right? I mean, like testing a strategy with back test data with like the biggest bull run in history, right? And then now you're in a choppy market and you're trying to apply that same whatever that strategy was that you tested and was successful. It's probably not going to work, right? You tested that in a bull market and now you're trying to apply it in a choppy market or a bear market. Like, yeah, you're screwing that up. So anyway, there's a lot to consider there, but I feel like it's better to have that data or that proof than none at all, right? Where somebody's just like, oh, look, I have this strategy and it works. Like, well, prove that it works. Prove that it would have worked if I applied it over the past 5 years. And then historical trade data. What I mean by that is, okay, you've back tested, and then maybe I'm coming into this room, the chat room, or I'm looking at a mentor who's been trading for 5, 10, 20 years. I want to see your historical trades. I want to see that you've actually applied this strategy and that it has worked and that it's worked in different kind of markets, or that you have an idea of when to put the pedal down and when to kind of ease off a little bit, right? Because that's important with pretty much every strategy. There's going to be times where you want to stomp the gas and other times where you want to go, this isn't the right market environment, right? And some market analysis is important, probably from a like a good grizzled veteran trader, somebody who's been around for at least 5 years, probably more like 10, 20 years, where they've seen all kinds of shit and they've seen it repeat over and over and over again, and they can just give some good analysis of like, all right, where are we at? Like, what's going on right now in the market, and how do we react to this? And um, so there's some good guys that are out there doing that. By the way, at the end of this, I'm going to talk about a couple of places that I went to for this kind of stuff. And I'm not going to make any recommendations. I'm just going to tell you what my experience was in those. So, and then are coaching sessions available? In other words, like do you just show up to this room every day and have them trade and sort of show you what they're doing, and then that's it? And that's, again, nothing wrong with that. Or do you get like one-on-one or even small group coaching sessions where you can maybe share the struggles that you had that week or things that you did and then get some feedback? Because direct feedback on what you're doing is important, but again, I feel like just because somebody's a good trader, they might not be good at doing that coaching part of it, right? So, if you get a vibe that you're paying for these coaching sessions and they're just really not a good coach, they still probably have a decent service because they're a good trader and they're telling you what they do and how to do it. But maybe don't pay for the coaching part of it if they're not a good coach, right? If you're not leaving those coaching sessions feeling like you actually got some good feedback and that they understood exactly what it was that you were doing, then it's probably not worth the money, right? Um, so, really quick, how to spot the bullshit mentors. this is you can find this information all over the place, so we won't spend a lot of time. But like, the guys that are always posting wins and never posting losses on Twitter or on YouTube or wherever, it doesn't really matter, I guess. But if they're always only posting wins, it's bullshit. Everybody loses. Everybody is losing trades. Although I feel like there's also a thing. I meant to put this in here, but like sometimes you'll get some guys on Twitter who post losses and everybody acts like they're like the second coming of Christ. Like, oh, dude, you're so legit. You always post your losses. It's like, okay, maybe they're just posting some of their losses. That doesn't mean they're actually legit. Maybe they're actually only posting 50% of the losing trades that they have. So it still looks like they're a winning trader, but really they're getting their dick kicked in every day. And so they could still be, just because somebody posts losses doesn't mean they're legit, is what I'm trying to get at. And although I do appreciate when people, if they post wins and losses, that they post both of them, that's great, but it doesn't automatically mean they're legit. I have seen some people who I think are full of shit post losses and get a ton of credit for it, and it just kind of lends them credibility. And I think that's exactly why they're doing it, to get that easy credibility because they post losses. So, uh, if you've got guys that only post charts or daily profit and loss, they never talk about the bigger picture. They never post monthly, yearly P&L. They don't talk about their win rate or their profit loss ratio, win loss ratio, whatever you want to call it. If it's just chart candy and shit like that, it's probably not somebody. They either are don't want to share that stuff, which is weird, or they're really not paying attention to it, and probably because their charts are bullshit and they've been photoshopped and they're just putting green and red arrows on places that look nice. But if they make trading sound easy, that's a pretty big red flag because trading is not. It's really hard and it's stressful and there's ups and downs and it's even if you're a good successful trader from the few that I think I've actually come across, it's still a rough, especially if you're like if this is your living, like you don't have another source of income, the market is your income. Dude, that's not an easy life. I guarantee it. I have another source of income, and although I make some money trading, it's still stressful, right? Because I'm still just worried about like, man, I really want this to be successful because it means a lot to me. Because at some point, maybe I would like this to be maybe not my only source of income, but at least my primary, maybe. Uh, so it's like important, and then that gets stressful, right? When you have a drawdown or you're having a shitty week, month, whatever it is. Yeah, that can be hard. So, um, if another thing, if they promote one setup that works forever in every market, that's dumb, right? We talked about that already. Like, markets change and setups have to change, or at least be managed or tweaked, and or just know when to take your foot off the gas, right? Know when it's like, yep, this is not my time to trade, so I'm gonna go on vacation for a couple of weeks. Which actually one of the probably more legit people that I know that are out there, a mentor that I follow, they do that. They'll literally be like, okay, the market's about to get choppy and this is not my environment. I'm going to go play golf for 3 weeks. Literally, they'll just keep an eye on the market, like check in every day on some of the major indices and be like, hey, yeah, it's not my time yet. We'll wait until it comes around. And then when the time comes, they sit back down at their desk and they get to it. Right now, they're at a position where they can do that. They can fuck off for 3 weeks and it's not a big deal to them. But it's important. They're saving themselves money and time and mental energy, right? So if you've got somebody who says like, "Oh, this setup's going to work all the time," and you're just going to completely all the time compound your accounts, yeah, it's probably horse shit, right? So these are the couple of places. I realize like I just went from that slide to this slide, which may be an implication, but it's not. I'm just going to talk about some of the places that I was rooms that I was in for a while. Okay, so I was in Madaz's room. I don't know how popular he is or anything anymore, but I was there while he had like a fucking stellar couple of months. Um, I like that he did the positives, live trading and chatting, so it helps see how he thinks about the market. And he was always actually on the microphone, not even like like text chatting, but like he was on the mic every morning talking, which was a good thing and a bad thing because sometimes he would just ramble on, or if he was kind of in a cranky mood, you could tell like wasn't in a good mood that day, or his first trade was a loser, so he'd get kind of ornery. Um, it would affect my because then I'm like listening to this guy just piss and moan, right? And I'm trying to trade at the same time, and it would just affect my. So sometimes I would have to mute that. But there was a lot of education in that room too. There were like recorded webinars and stuff about his trades, and he's got a pretty big YouTube channel, or did at the time, where you could go back and kind of get the idea of what he was doing. That's really when I started in small caps. Actually, I was never in the room, but I used to, who didn't eventually like start out with Ross Cameron, right? But Mad as was like one of the first times where I was like, I'm going to try that strategy. So anywho, yeah, I thought it was a pretty good room, but the negatives were I don't remember that there was any historical trade data other than like going back through his YouTube videos, but those were handpicked, right? It was like, okay, here's a big loss that I took, here's a big winner that I had. Um, and the chat room was crowded. There was a lot of bro chat and distraction and shit of just, everybody throwing in their 2 cents. And I remember like a few specific people who just have a personality type that just drives me fucking crazy, where they just, I don't even know what to call it, like drama queen kind of, but just like everything, every trade they took was either the best trade ever or the worst trade ever, and they were always ups and downs. And it just sounds like it was like somebody who just this game's not for you, dude. If you're not pretty even keel, I feel like trading is just going to be a rough existence for you. Um, so personal negatives, and that's just what applied to me is it's just not a trading style I could make work for me. It didn't fit my personality. This doesn't mean it's not a valid way to go about things. I know Matt has had a couple of like rough years because he had those huge years where he sized up and then he got fucking shithoused when he was still trading big size and the market had not been in his favor and some things changed. I don't really pay much attention over there anymore. Honestly, I don't know what he's up to these days, um, but just the style of how he traded was it reminded me of very much like a gamer style, like very intense kind of holy shit, is this going to work? And there was always like emotion involved, a lot of it, and that's just not me. I'm just kind of more of like an even keel, like oh, I'd like to just hit this button once and then see what happens, and set my stop and my target and just let it play out and not have to worry about it. Like that's kind of me. And uh I don't know, maybe I'll learn one day that that actually doesn't work, and you've got to be on top of every trade. But just that whole scalping thing is not for me. Anyway, I was with Trade the Matrix for a while. Again, I don't. Once I leave a room, I kind of don't pay attention to the person or the people anymore. So I don't know what's going on over there. I don't know if he still has a room or if he's on Twitter. Be honest, I don't know. The positives, live trading and chatting again, and education. There were plenty of materials to look through. I did appreciate that. You could tell that he really, or they really. I don't know if it was a. To be honest, I don't know if that was a male or female that ran that room, but they really put a bunch of materials, took a lot of time and effort to make the education materials good. The negatives again was it's a style I couldn't really make fit for me. Again, it was like a very intense. There was a lot of focus and like switching back between charts, and this is the way they recommended to do it, but it seemed like switching between charts and looking for certain patterns and trying to spot the rigging and really cool shit. And like I respect it as a an approach. It just didn't jive for me. So and then most recently I was in Chris Verma's room, which I was there for the longest out of any of these, mostly because I like Chris's approach as far as data and backtesting and all that. I come from a science-based background, sort of. That's the field that I'm in, and I've read a lot of research, so quite a lot of medical journals and things like that. So where there's a lot of controlled trials and then statistical analysis of those trials. And so when I got to Chris's room and he talked about that, he was like, data is the most important thing. Doesn't matter what you think or what you want the market to do, whatever the data shows is happening, that's what's most important. And I was like, hell yeah, this is my place. So live trading and chatting again. Chris is never on. Not I shouldn't say never. He was very rarely on mic, but but sharing thoughts and what he, the plays that were coming up through the text channel there. Um, Great webinars actually on setups and theory behind trading and position sizing. That's what I was talking about. Like I watched. First thing I did was jump through all those and take notes. And some of the things he said, I was like, all right, this guy has he's I like where this guy's going. We have some shared viewpoints on how things should work. So, kind of a scientific approach, I would say, is what Chris takes. So, I appreciate that, even if he's wrong sometimes, right? Like, at least you took a good approach. Even science is that way, right? It's self-correcting in the sense that you'll get shit wrong sometimes, and then you'll study it more, and you'll eventually get it right. Um, Actually, one of the webinars was, and he did this some from time to time. He would have webinars from successful members and people that have done well. And one of the webinars he had was from a guy, Day Trading Zoo on Twitter, and it was all about coding and being able to access stuff like Polygon to get data and backtest strategies. And that's what got me started coding. Which I mean, I'd done some coding like HTML shit in the past for websites, um, but that's what got me started back into coding with like Python and learning how to access data. Then I did a lot of Googling and taught myself a lot of stuff from there. But that was probably the most influential webinar in that whole series. Nothing against the stuff Chris did, but just me being able to backtest and develop my own strategies and test them. That kind of opened up a whole world of possibilities, right? I didn't need anyone else's strategies at that point. So um, Chris did have a great trade history database. It was like, this is every trade I've taken, this is how they've worked out. He was also very transparent about which trades he would count toward his system. What I mean by that is like, if there were, I don't know how many people were in that room, right? But he would ask everybody, like, hey, was everybody able to get into that? And sometimes it was like the entry that we were looking for was literally like the top tick, and people would be like, "Yeah, I got a couple shares, but not real size." And then most other people would be like, "Nope, I couldn't do it." And Chris would be like, "All right, we're not going to count that as a system trade because nobody was actually able to get into that damn thing." Same thing with like if no one had locates, he'd be like, "Well, we're not going to count that as a system trade for the history of how the system's performing because it wasn't a valid trade." And that's where there was a difference between the back tested data, right, and the real time, like real historical data of the trades. Because when you're back testing, if the price hits, I mean, there's other ways to go around this, but for the most part, if the price hits a certain thing and that's what your system does, okay, even if it was two shares that was traded at that price, again, you can figure that stuff out if you're really good at coding. But like, uh, anyway, your back test will count that trade, whereas in real life, that trade would never be possible, right? Unless you wanted to just get two shares. Uh, so anyway, his database was awesome. He was really transparent, I feel, with all of that stuff. So I appreciate Chris's his approach to everything. Um, the negatives, the chat could get crowded sometimes. This wasn't usually a problem in that room because there wasn't so many people, but um, you would notice it like right after Chris would have an interview drop, like when he did an interview with the Humboldt trader. Like you just get a bunch of new people joining the room, right? And they're asking like stupid fucking questions. There are some things with stupid questions. They're really lazy questions, right? It's like you just asked a question that's literally the first thing in the frequently asked questions section, or it's in like the first webinar. Get your shit together. Go watch those first before you even open your mouth. And that's where like it would be awesome if some rooms had like a okay, you have to you have to wait 30 days before you can actually chat in the room, right? Like just go do the webinars or you like take a test or something. Like here's the webinars and then you have to pass this test that goes over all the basics of the room of the strategies and all that shit, and then you can interact in the room and ask questions because you're not just going to be asking stupid dumb questions that you know are easy to find the answer to. Anyway, so overall, I had a good impression of this room. I learned, I should say, I learned something in every room that I've been in. I think there's always positives to take away from them. You always do have to have your bullshit detector on because not necessarily even the person who runs the room, but the other people that are in the room. You're if you're reading through the chat, you're going to get like that stuff gets into your brain, right? And then you're going to see somebody who's like, "Oh, I do this, blah blah blah," And you don't know that person from Adam, right? So that who knows whether that's really trustworthy information or not. So, but you can learn something from every room that you go to. Uh, I forgot there's another slide here. So the personal positives, I liked the trading style for the most part because it was a data based and it was kind of like an enter here, exit here, stop there. Like that's very clear. And I really got good while I was in this room. I got good at following the plan and not letting emotion get the best of me and fucking up what was a good system. Um, Now I do, as you saw in my last video, just the whole, and this wasn't all Chris's stuff, but just shorting in general and uh, the accounting of it with locates and everything just was not really working for me. So I still do short some small cap setups, a very limited amount of setups, uh, but uh, but it's not my main focus anymore. Um, it's because of that. But I got really good at following a plan. So then when I transitioned from or started to transition from that shorting to maybe like some swing trading that I'm doing now, which I'm doing well with. That's where I'm like making the bulk of my income with trading. Uh, the following the plan and having the practice of like I don't get shaken out of trades because I get emotional, or I don't get shaken out of entering a trade because it's, oh, this one doesn't look, and it's just like, okay, if you've got criteria to clear criteria and you take most of the decision making out of it and it's just okay, XYZ, this happened, enter the trade. I'm really good at following a plan like that. If I have confidence in the fact that that it's, it has data behind it and it's likely to perform. So also, obviously, the personal positive of I learned enough Python and became more data minded. Um, that again, that was just congruent with how I already felt about some things. So um, yeah, I already mentioned small account. It was frustrating a little bit. That's not a critique of the service. It's more of just probably a little bit of a critique on myself, and then also just maybe the shorting small caps thing. I really do. I doubt whether long term it's a sustainable strategy. I feel like locate prices just add in some. I don't know. There's costs there that just I feel like it makes it hard to make long term sustainable. I feel like people that short small caps will go through these cycles where they do really well, and then the rest of the time they're kind of just grinding, which is probably true for most trading styles. Don't get me wrong, because the market cycles and all that stuff. But I don't know, just with that extra, like, okay, well, you've got locates and you've got all these scanners that you have to pay for and all this other shit. I realize that some of that is really small potatoes for people with big accounts because the fixed costs really get taken care of those pretty quickly with profits. But for small accounts, if you've got paying 150 for platform fees and you're paying another 100 for your scanner and another 100 for your journal per month, like those start to add up. And with a small account, unless you're like really leveraging and going like balls out size, it's going to be hard to outrun those fees. Anyway, we did that already in that a different video. Um, so just take home thoughts really quick to wrap it up because I talked way longer than I meant to, as always happens. Get a mentor. It's some sort, probably, unless you're really independent. If you're one of those people, it's just like, nope, I don't care about anybody else. I'm just going to do this my own way. That's awesome. But it is hard, and trading gets lonely when you're not in a room or you're not talking to other traders in some way, shape, or fashion. It can be kind of like my own little island here, just fucking hanging out, which can be fun. And it also can be sort of like, okay, I need to talk to somebody about this. I really want to just complain about that day or whatever. You could sometimes it just helps to have other people to commiserate with. But you can learn, take what works, make it your own. That's definitely important. I mean, as much as I just talked about how it's good to have other people to commiserate with or to share with or to just go through shit with. Trading is a kind of a solitary practice, right? You have to take what you get from other people and make it your own and do your own thing. Um, in fact, there was a really good video recently where I'm gonna butcher I don't remember the guy's name. It's the Greek dude that did really well in the trading championship last year. He was on Trader Lion podcast or show or whatever you call it. And that was one of the things that he said. He said something about like making everything his own. It was like, and that was kind of like the keystone statement. From there, he was like, well, then I did this and I did this and I did this. But it was just really once he said, okay, I've got to do this myself. That's when he started to find success. I thought that was cool. So avoid the furus. There's enough out there now. Like people are calling bullshit on all the fakes out there and the jerk offs who are just preying on new people. But hopefully, if you're a new person, you find a video like this one or one of the other better ones that's out there that talk about don't buy into the fake shit, and don't trust traders whose styles don't resonate with you. Don't do some introspection, find out what your personality is and what your strengths are in a trading situation, trading scenario, and then and find somebody who's matches that, right? Um, and know when to cut and run. Once they have no more to teach, or you're not learning anything, you're not gaining any more good experience, move on. Just take all the shit that they taught you and keep moving on down the road because this is your own journey, right? And when I was a kid, I played guitar, and I at some point got to a place where my current teacher looked at me and said, "I don't have anything more I can teach you. You need to go to somebody else. Like you need to go to somebody who has more education than I do or a different experience." And I respected that at the time. And looking back, I think like, man, that's an awesome thing to do, right? Like to just know, like, okay, you're beyond what I can teach you, so go do something else now. I need the money, but that's it's unfair to do that, right? Anyway, so move on, do your own thing, then make it all your own. Be independent and fucking plant your flag. Get the hell out there. Anyway, good luck, everybody. I hope this was somewhat helpful. And I'll start doing some more. I want to do some more like weekly or daily recaps or something like that. So, kind of show you guys what I'm doing with the swing trading stuff. But all right, talk soon.